Hey guys, Manic Mercurian here, and in this video, I'm going to go over the weekly astrology for the week of Tuesday, August 31st through Monday, September 6th. So let's get into it. So we start out here. This is the chart for around midday Eastern Standard Time for Tuesday, August 31st. And just a quick side note, I just want to mention Mercury just entered Libra on the 30th, I believe. Is that correct? Let me take a look. Yes, on the 30th. So Mercury is just very fresh in Libra as we start out the day on the 31st. And the moon is in Gemini. So I was just talking about last week how there's this shift to so much airy energy. It was so earthy just a couple days ago, and then now it is so airy with Mercury, Venus, and the moon all in air just for this brief day or two. And yeah, so what does that mean? That means we're feeling light and social and inquisitive, or that there's strong like mental energy, and you can be more experimental and more spontaneous, but at the same time there is that focus on Libra, so we can be more reflective or think before we act, more considerate of other people's thoughts and emotions, especially with Venus in domicile in Libra. We're very much functioning as maybe would be expected regarding empathy and thinking about other people and social graces and mannerisms and all that good fun Venus in Libra type of stuff. And then now with Mercury freshly in Libra as well, now our thinking is more focused on our interpersonal dynamics as well, especially on one-on-one relationships. And then the moon is just adding to this, being in Gemini, being in the social, curious sign of Gemini. And yeah, that's the main thing I wanted to cover here. So on the 31st, there are no planetary aspects that are exact. And when I say that, I don't typically cover quincunxes or semi-sextiles. So I'm not including those. But yeah, there's no major planetary aspects on this day. Mostly just all that air energy, like I was saying. Excuse me. The sun is in Virgo, so of course, we are in Virgo season, which is more heavy and earthy and grounded and intellectual. There is that grounded, earthy energy brought on by the sun and by Mars. We could be extra productive at this time still, but with Mercury, Venus, and the moon all in air signs, we're also feeling airy and chatty and curious and social and all that good stuff. Let's go forward, because honestly, that's pretty much all I have for the 31st. Let's go forward to Wednesday, September 1st. So it's already the beginning of a new month, and depending on where you are, the moon will enter Cancer either very late on Tuesday the 31st or very early on Wednesday, September 1st. But at any rate, we begin Wednesday with the moon in Cancer, basically. And this is nice because we're coming down off that quarter moon energy. So it's no longer the third quarter moon in Gemini. All that spontaneous, sporadic energy has kind of become more mild. It's maybe dulled down a bit, and it's become more harmonious because now the moon is sextiling the sun in Virgo. And I think the people always talk about how Virgo and Scorpio are like used to be the same sign or whatever, and they talk about that sextile. I think the sextile between Virgo and Cancer is underrated. That might just be my own astrology, but I think it's a nice sextile. You've got Cancer, which is so sensitive and emotional, which is very much aided by Virgo's groundedness and structure. But then Virgo is also very much aided by Cancer's, sensitivity and, all that emotion and humor and softness. So really the sun and the moon are very much in harmony here. They're sextiling by sign, all day on the 1st, since moon's in Cancer. So that looks nice. And then that kind of brings some water to things. There's no fire planets right now at all, I just noticed. So, things are generally very well-rounded with, 2 planets, and at least I'm just focusing on the inner planets right now. There's 2 in Earth, in Virgo, and then 2 in air in Libra. And then we've got the moon in Cancer and domicile as well. So everything's very balanced, except for the fact that there are no fire planets whatsoever, unless you include Chiron, which is, so we'll just say Chiron's like half a planet. It's half a planet. But yeah, I mean, with things not being in fire, we might not have that super expressive energy, or that energy to be more like aggressive or domineering, or to initiate things. It might be harder to maybe initiate like new things. It's not really a good time for initiating completely new things, especially since we're in Virgo season, which is mutable. It's kind of an ending. It's an end of summer. But but other than that, yeah, you've got the earthy groundedness of the Sun and Mars, and then the diplomatic and social airiness of Mercury and Venus, combined with the more emotional, sensitive Moon and Cancer. So to me, generally speaking, that looks really well rounded. It looks like, I don't know, I think as a whole, I think it would be a good time. It's a good vibe. I know that's kind of vague, but it looks pleasant and casual to me. There's also no like crazy aspects at this time. Mars is about to oppose Neptune, though. We'll talk about that in just a second. Actually, maybe we'll talk about that now. Yeah, let's talk about it. So, you may start to feel that on September the 1st, on Wednesday, but this aspect becomes exact on Thursday the 2nd, and that is Mars opposing Neptune. So Mars is where Mercury was just a week ago. And okay, so Mars combining with Neptune is an interesting mix, because you've got Neptune, which is all dreamy and philosophical, and I don't know, it's confusing and dreamy, and it's all about your worst dreams, worst nightmares, and your best dreams. But all that's mixing with Mars, which is all masculine and aggressive and domineering and violent and sexual. So how do those mix? I don't know. I think we can. Mars sort of rules how we fight and what we fight for. And in Virgo, we're fighting over kind of mundane like things, which like I was saying before, we can be neurotic at this time and overreact about small mundane issues. But on the other hand, Mars and Virgo can be very productive, very ambitious, very good at getting those mundane tasks done. But then when you're bringing in this opposition with Neptune in Pisces, I think we might be confused on what we're fighting for, or if we should fight, or like we might confuse the details, or anything that we're ambitious for, or that we're working on achieving right now. We would want to make sure that we are correct in our assumptions, and we're not actually working against ourselves, or working on a project which is not of value or importance or relevance, or working against ourselves, or working against people that might be wanting to help you. There can just be that confusion to the ambitious or productive energy. Because like I've said before, Mars in Virgo is so productive. It's so awesome at being productive. But when you add this lens of confusion with Neptune, we just want to make sure that we're working on the correct tasks, for the correct people, or in the correct way, and not blowing things out of proportion, or fighting needlessly, etc. Hopefully that makes sense. And what else? Moon is just transiting Cancer all day, which again is nice. It's in domicile, and then Moon will trine Neptune for that matter. So, yeah, and I guess I could just say, with the Moon transiting over Cancer on Wednesday and Thursday, the 1st and 2nd of September, it just allows us to feel more in touch with our emotions, which can be negative if our emotions are negative, but generally speaking, it's nice to know how you feel. It's nice to be more aware in that particular area. And again, with that sextile with the Sun, at least by sign, it's a nice energy. The Moon is still waning. It's a waning crescent at this point, but those crescent moons are nice because they mean it's a sextile, so it's harmonious. It's generally pretty relaxed. It's just that opposition between Neptune and Mars that could get us into trouble at this point. So I would say one last note on that before I move on is like maybe just not maybe just double check your thinking, or especially if, I don't know, if things do become heated at all, maybe just think it over or even sleep on it before acting or reacting. Maybe just make sure that you're like Virgo is so methodical. So don't be getting rushed or stressed or angry or some kind of emotion like that. Don't skip over your steps, or if there's a process to what you're doing. I would say to make sure you follow the process and maybe even double or triple check things before you act, just to make sure that Neptune isn't clouding your thinking or your ambitious or even aggressive energy or defensive energy for that matter. Okay, I think I covered that sufficiently. Let's move on to September 3rd. So yeah, about halfway through September 3rd, depending on where you are, the moon enters Leo. And now it's becoming more of a dark moon. It's becoming less and less visible, and we're preparing for a new moon, which will be in Virgo, which will really emphasize the Virgo season. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So moon in Leo, what else? There's no exact aspects. There's not a lot of exact planetary aspects lately, if you haven't noticed. You do have Mercury about to trine Saturn tomorrow on the 4th. But as of the 3rd, the sun quincunxes Chiron. I feel like I'm grasping for straws here. There's just not a lot of aspects. So generally speaking, it's that same vibe continued of, the main action right now in the short term is in Virgo and Libra, with 2 inner planets in Virgo and then 2 inner planets in Libra. So we're still, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but we're feeling grounded and getting organized and all those things that we experience in late summer. Kind of a mixed bag. Virgo actually does pertain to family to some extent as well. So we're managing, we're organizing, we're taking care of others, especially with the Libra emphasis as well. And getting organized, planning, and then also focusing on our interpersonal relationships, especially one-on-one relationships with Mercury and Venus and Libra. So that's just the general themes that are going on at this general time. With Moon entering Leo, things are a little bit more upbeat. I wouldn't say it's the most intense thing in the world though, because at this point the moon has hardly any light. It's becoming a sliver and it's preparing for the new moon. So it's reaching its end point in the phase. It's ending this lunar phase. Let's go forward. Enough said about that. September 4th, which is Saturday, September 4th. You do have Mercury making that trine with Saturn. It's Mercury at 7 degrees Libra, trining Saturn at 7 degrees Aquarius. And so Saturn in Aquarius is so holistic in its thinking and maybe even abstract. And it's very much thinking about the future. Saturn is always future oriented, but so is Aquarius. And so Mercury making that connection from Libra to Saturn and Aquarius, we're thinking about our relationships, but also something that Aquarius teaches us, especially with this particular aspect, is the reason why Aquarius rules over our long-term plans, but also, our hopes and dreams, but also the groups we associate with, is because ultimately something that you realize is that if you do have, let's say in Capricorn, you start these long-term plans and ambitions, after a certain point, you realize that you're going to need a community to support that. You're going to need other people to work with, other people to support you, or that maybe you could support, depending on the nature of your plans and aspirations. And so, that's so all these things kind of come together in Aquarius, where you realize, I do have these long-term plans, but I can't do it alone. I'm going to need cooperation or camaraderie. I'm going to need a social environment that's conducive to my long-term aspirations. So that's all just Aquarius stuff, especially Saturn and Aquarius. So, Mercury and Libra making that connection, we might be very strategic with our relationships at this time, or with our words, or with our conversations. We might be more intellectually attracted to, people whose beliefs are in line with ours, whose goals are in line with ours, or people who can support our goals or our aspirations in some way. You might have kind of dreams or goals, and after a while it becomes clear like what people are, what's the word, are what people which people are compatible with your long-term plans, goals, aspirations, and which people are not. Some people will be very much supportive of those plans and goals, and some people will be very detrimental. And so I think with Mercury making that aspect, that conversation with Saturn and Aquarius, we're just more strategic, more mindful of our relationships, and more long-term thinking. Libra is very strategic as well. These are the two most detached signs, in my opinion, Libra and Aquarius. So we are thinking about other people, but we're also, the if Mercury rules our thinking patterns are relatively emotionless right now, with Mercury in Libra, especially because there's really no water planets at this time except for Neptune. And that's a very distant outer planet that's really just contributing to the background vibe or long-term vibe of things. So yeah, at this time with the Virgo stuff and the Mercury and Libra trining Saturn and Aquarius, we may be very detached. And one plus of being detached is you can just observe everything and really assess the weight of everything. You can assess the variables and see what your long-term goals might be or how to get there. Okay, I rambled on quite a bit about that, and that's the main thing I see for the 4th. Let's go forward to Sunday, September 5th. We've got Venus at 24 degrees Libra squaring Pluto at 24 degrees Capricorn. So let's see here. Okay, I'm almost picturing it like a battle, and I don't know, at face value, Pluto seems so formidable. It's such a slower, more, in a way, it's almost like stronger, or it's physically very small, but its meaning and impact is very large and long lasting. So it's almost like this big, formidable giant in a way, even though it's such a small planet. But all that is clashing with Venus, and but Venus is in domicile. She's strong in Libra. So that clash, that quarter, that square, there could be some kind of crisis involving relationships or what we value, things that support us. There could be this heavy, transformation. That's a key word with Pluto. So it could be a crisis, but usually crises are just, times of immense or sudden change, right? So there could be some kind of major change or adjustment, something emotionally heavy or, that we may have not anticipated on September 5th, especially pertaining to maybe our one-on-one social dynamics, partnerships, relationships. It could also be your money, even though Venus in Libra is more socially focused, it's not as materialistic as, it might be in like Taurus, for example, but still Venus does rule, abundance and wealth to some extent. So there could be some kind of crisis or, transformation there with that aspect. Yeah, that's the main thing I see. Okay, and that's the only aspect I have for September 5th. The plants are almost eerily quiet right now, I feel like. And I'm thinking there's going to be some major aspects up the road, and I'll need to look into that here in a second. But, okay, and Moon enters Virgo, looks like later in the day on September 5th. Whoops, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to go hours ahead. I'm so sorry. Okay, so yeah, later in the day, September 5th, the moon does enter Virgo. So it's very much hinting at, we're pretty much there at the new moon now. The moon is wrapping things up. It's approaching the sun. It has, it's not visible at this point, or if it is, it's just barely a sliver at all. So September 5th, yeah, I think I covered everything from September 5th. Let's go forward to September 6th, the final day of this weekly forecast, where we have this new moon. And let me just make sure. So there's actually 3 main things happening. The main thing is, of course, the new moon. Especially because this new moon does make an exact aspect by degree. It makes it a trine. So the new moon is at 14 degrees Virgo, and it's making a trine to the degree to Uranus at 14 degrees Taurus. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but I want to cover these two other, relatively less important aspects. But they're also trines, though. So there's three different trines, four if you include the sun and the moon separately. But there's three different trines all happening on this same day. So not only is the new moon, meaning the sun and the moon, are trining Uranus, there's also Venus at 25 degrees Libra, or 20, yes, 25 degrees, because Jupiter's at the very last minute of the 24th degree. Anyway, Venus at 25 degrees Libra trines Jupiter at 25 degrees Aquarius. Looks like very late in the day, maybe early on the 7th, depending on where you are. And then, so that's one trine. And then another is Mars trining Pluto. So Mars is at 24 degrees Virgo, and it's trining Pluto at 24 degrees Capricorn. Okay. Let's see here. Yes, I don't know, it's interesting. It's, I don't know, to have all these trines happening at the same time, and they're not super connected to each other. Although Mars, how do I even say this? Venus is squaring Pluto and trining Jupiter pretty much at the same time, and then Mars is trining Pluto and quincunxing Jupiter, and that's all. This is all just background noise. It's all ambience compared to the new moon trining Uranus, which is the main event. Okay, so how do I even begin to... okay, so Venus trining Jupiter in Aquarius. Let's talk about that first. To me, this seems very social, but also very detached and very mental. And it's interesting because it is sort of in the last, these planets are beginning to be in the last degrees of their signs, well, except Jupiter, which is retrograde. But let's see here. Okay, yeah. So I was mistaken. So the trine between Venus and Jupiter actually happens early on the 6th, because I forgot that Jupiter is retrograde. Anyway, so this trine is very social. I think we could have a like Venus will bring abundance to Jupiter and Aquarius. So Jupiter and Aquarius is bringing abundance to our group interactions, the groups and tribes that we associate with. It could be online groups with, Aquarius so much having to do with the internet, online interactions and technology. But Venus is making this, quick connection and bringing more abundance and pleasure to those realms of our lives. So I think Venus trining Jupiter, even though Jupiter is retrograde, I think Venus making that trine to Jupiter in the air signs. They're both the two main benefic planets. So they're both bringing joy and abundance and pleasure and grace and ease to our social dynamics. So we may be able to socialize better and to network, especially online with that Aquarian influence. And then with Mars in Virgo trining Pluto and Capricorn, that's a much more productive energy to me. It's, since it's an Earth trine, Mars, and it's interesting because you have both of these more inner planets in these younger signs of Virgo and Libra, both each making their own trine to these more outer planets in these older signs of Capricorn and Aquarius. Okay, but yeah, Mars. So Mars in Virgo is very productive and very very excited about getting all these more mundane tasks accomplished. But then trining Pluto in Capricorn, which is such a older and wiser and more long-term energy, I think Pluto is maybe aiding us in working in the short term or working on small tasks, but it's in order to achieve very much larger tasks or more long-term accomplishments or achievements, if that makes sense. So it looks very productive to me. Pluto could also be transforming and changing what we're valuing, what we're working on, what we're valuing on in the terms of what we value to achieve, or what we value with our time, what we want to work on, the projects and assignments that we take on. There may be some kind of dramatic, intense transformation or change to our projects and our ambitions, maybe to our finances to some extent, to how we organize ourselves. Yes, hopefully that makes sense. And then the main thing is the new moon in Virgo, 14 degrees, trining Uranus. So let's just start with the new moon itself. So new moons, it's almost like a second beginning of that sign. So we've already been, in Virgo season for sure. We're already very much deep into the season of Virgo, about halfway through it. But this is the first new moon of the year in Virgo. And so we're really, really beginning Virgo now. We're really beginning to feel that, summer is very much coming to a conclusion, and we're very much moving on and looking toward fall, although it has not yet started yet, but it will soon, in just a couple of weeks at this point. So yeah, we're that much more focused on all the Virgo stuff, because now there's this new moon. Not only has the sun, already begun its transit in Virgo a while ago, but then now the moon is starting a whole lunar phase, a whole month focused on Virgo in a way, since the lunar phase is starting here. So yeah, we're that much more focused on organizing and, taking care of the details, taking care of mundane tasks, organizing, cleaning, studying, etc. All those Virgo archetypes of, the more mundane activities, or of higher learning as well, or teaching for that matter. Virgo likes to be very organized, very intellectual. It's about learning. It's also about nature. It's an earth sign, etc. So this is the focus, very much so at this time. But then this new moon, this new beginning is infused with the energies of Uranus, making this trine from Taurus. And so, okay, so that just makes everything unpredictable. There could be that, and also it increases the weight or the value of it, especially it being a more long-term planet. There could be bigger picture, something really big in the world that's beginning, regarding our finances, commodities, stocks, economics, stuff like that, if that makes sense. So there could be something new or radicalizing about, any of those areas of life. It could also be about the more mundane aspects of our lives. Maybe there's some kind of revolution to the more mundane aspects of our lives somehow. There's like a new way of doing something, a new way of organizing or taking care of your finances. There's a new beginning in that area, unexpected changes in those areas. And especially if you have planets in, especially Virgo, or or Earth planets, I would say. So especially Virgo, but also Taurus and Capricorn. You may find new ways. You may have epiphanies or realizations of new ways to do mundane aspects of your life, like new ways of organizing or making money or spending money or organizing. All those details of the methods and the routines and the habits that you have in life regarding cleaning, organizing, money. All these things could have some kind of unexpected change. Like you might have this realization, or there may be this event that spurs these changes in those areas. Okay, that's pretty much what I have. So hopefully that resonated with you. Hopefully that was informative. And yeah, take care. Thanks for watching. I don't know what else to say, but yeah, hope you enjoyed. Okay, bye.